Zen Painting. This is not the place to discuss the abiding influence which Zen has had on all the Japanese arts, as Suzuki has shown, nor the method of instruction in the individual arts, the needs for concentration, and the inner work by means of which the artist becomes a master. I have done this in my other book, Zen in the Art of Archery, where I was concerned with the influence of Zen as a whole on the individual arts, including the art of swordsmanship. Here we are concerned with something else, the specific influence of Satori, the way in which it expresses itself pictorially, above all in Zen painting. For there is a distinct school of Zen painting, works in which the illuminated vision of existence is the theme of the picture. What is characteristic of these paintings? First of all, space. But space in Zen painting is not our Western space with its various dimensions, a uniform medium in which things stand, which surrounds them and isolates them from one another, not a dead emptiness which can be displaced by objects and is confined to the visible relations between right and left, top and bottom, foreground and background, not a space that touches only the surface of the object, enclosing it like a skin, and therefore, where there is nothing in it, void of meaning, an undemanding background. Space in Zen painting is forever unmoved, and yet in motion. It seems to live and breathe. It is formless and empty, and yet the source of all form. It is nameless, and yet the reason why everything has a name. Because of it, things have an absolute value, are all equally important and meaningful, exponents of the universal life that flows through them. This also explains the profound significance in Zen painting of leaving things out. What is not suggested, not said, is more important and expressive than what is said. Here again, as in the art of the theater, you see the undancing dance, animating all things, pervading and dancing through all things. Space is not a homogeneous, empty medium extending to infinity. It is the inconceivable plenitude of existence itself, with all its infinite possibilities. The Zen painter, therefore, has no horror vacui. For him, the void is worthy of the highest veneration. It is the most living thing of all, so overflowing with life that it need not assume shape and form, and, in order to become manifest, particularize itself in the endless cycle of change. Space is not the skin lying around things, but their core, their deepest essence, their reason for their being. The magic of the void is expressed in these paintings, bewitching to the eye, summoning a mood of reverence. Looking at a painting always begins with looking at the void. In Western painting, the observer stands outside the picture. What he sees is experienced as an opposite, living its own separate life and carrying his eye in diminishing perspective to the horizon. It is as though the mere act of looking were creative. For this mode of seeing, everything opposite is essentially extraneous, outside the observer, and it enters into his consciousness by the very fact that he is not there, but is detached from the picture. In Chinese and Japanese painting, you do not look in from an outside perspective, for the subject and every detail of it are seen so intensely from the inside that the beholder must himself be in the picture, must live in it in order to do it justice. Not only does this perspective become so pointless that it disappears altogether, but the relationship of observer to observed is abolished. Space closes in around the observer, who now stands everywhere in the center without being the center. He is now in their midst, one with the heartbeat of things. And in turn, what surrounds and encloses him is so much his own equal that he feels it is not there just for him and for his sake. It is not an opposite, but, as it were, himself in ever-changing form. They are so at one that he no longer has a meaning of his own. He is submerged in it, vanishing within it, encounters himself and yet not himself, an evanescence in the essence of things. But the objects in the picture, mountains and woods, rocks and water, flowers, animals and men, forms sprung from the void, stand there fully revealed in their actuality, plunged in the concrete situation of the here and now, and yet not in a mere here and now. Hence the impression of continual evanescence, as though the definite were being absorbed back into the indefinite, the formed into the formless, thus making visible the primal ground from which they come. There are textbooks of ink painting in which everything that the painter's eye can meet, from a blade of grass to a great landscape, is held fast in its essential features, capturing in a few strokes just that quality which gives nature the character of being alive. They are not intended as models to be copied, much as one is tempted to do so. Rather, they are exercises in the various styles of brushstroke, showing the close affinities between painting and calligraphy. If these exercises can be mastered so that you rise above technique into freedom, able to express the finest nuances, you are then in a position to depict what the third eye sees and interprets. Zen painting links up with a great tradition, with Chinese landscape painting before the advent of Buddhism. There, the features characteristic of Zen painting were already crystallized, or at any rate prefigured. This may perhaps have been due to the profound and secret influence of Taoism. When Buddhism first reached China from India, with revolutionary results, it underwent a slow but far-reaching transformation through Taoism. Just as China, in the course of her history, has always swallowed up the alien tribes that invaded the country, so spiritually she has assimilated everything that was once of foreign origin, only to give it back greatly refined and enriched. Zen is perhaps the most beautiful and mysterious blossom of the uncanny creativity of the Chinese genius. So it is not surprising that Zen painters trace their descent from the pre-Buddhist paintings of China, which were molded by the spirit of Taoism. In the Taoism of Lao Tzu, we may find motifs that are fundamentally important in Zen. In fact, what was dimly discerned in Taoism is revealed in Zen. What is true of landscape painting in general is true also of the tiniest segment of a landscape of nature, of those incredibly alive paintings that conjure up, with a few delicate or powerful brush strokes, a bamboo stem, a cluster of reeds, a flowering branch. They too are seen from the formless void and can be understood only from that standpoint. Here again, the relationship of the drawing to the empty space is paramount. Indeed, the peculiar feeling of space is expressed even more convincingly than in the larger compositions. Nothing could be more mistaken than to see the calm beauty of existence permanently captured there and offered for ceaseless contemplation. A person who really knows how to read this picture writing feels, through the semblance of calm, the mighty tension of the world process, of things rising up and sinking away, appearing and vanishing, how everything that has become vibrates in the flux of becoming and unbecoming, evanescent yet absolute. These quite simple pictures, showing so infinitely little, are so full of Zen that the beholder feels overwhelmed by them. Anyone who has seen at a long drawn-out tea ceremony how the whole atmosphere changes when the hanging scrolls are put out, how the guests, sunk in contemplation before the picture, experience an unveiling of mysteries which none of them can put into words, and depart from the tea room feeling unutterably enriched, will know what power emanates from those paintings.